Hello, 5 this time, I think. And welcome to Gianni's team selection for Game Week 26. Now, we are in the middle of Game Week 25. There are fixtures to come tonight. It is Wednesday afternoon at the moment. So we'll have a quick look at that, but we will mostly look ahead to what Gianni is going to do in 26 and beyond. So, Gianni, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
I'm very well, mate. This is the most fun part of the season, isn't it? The chaos has begun. The blanks, the doubles, the last minute announcements, which we'll no doubt get. The repercussions of FA Cup ties. It's really fun. I'm excited. And I really hope we see lots of different strategies and lots of different managers going in different directions, because I think that makes it more and more exciting as well.
Yeah, I think we often say, or I often say, I'll pretend other people say it, that, a lot of the season, we know FPL, luck, skill, whatever that conversation is. But if there is skill, somewhere where people who, what's the word we used, often engage, maybe that's a bit harsh, but the people who are more likely to put time into it, it's these times of the season where we are most likely to gain our points. Usually it's that kind of 32 to 36 period. But this year we've, because of other postponements and whatnot, it's come a bit early and we still have that period later. But if you are, what would you say if you're 100k, 200k, 300k, top 50k is still open to you just based on this period? Maybe better. What do you reckon?
Yeah, 100% mass gains. I mean, you look at the top 10k and see the percentage of managers that have used chips, it's actually pretty high. And, there's a lot in it that will have better ranks than you guys watching, and me and Seb that probably have used 2 of 4 chips quite comfortably. So, yeah, I think we're in good positions, and this is where you can make mass gains. And again, as you mentioned, we've still got that other period later in the season, the 32 on, where, again, there'll be a little bit more chaos, there'll be more blanks, more doubles, and, again, a really good time to make those big gains.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk about that period coming as well, because it's kind of linked strategy-wise, isn't it? What you do now will affect what you have to do later. Yeah. But first, let's have a look at how you are faring this week in Game Week, or last week, this week, Game Week 25. We have your team on screen, but why don't you run it through us for us?
Oh, yeah. 43 points so far. Loads of 1-pointers, Seb. 5 of on 1 point. So Kepa with 1, White with 7, Ake with 6. Thank you, Pep, for the early sub. Tarkowski with 1, Trent with 6. These guys have got another game to play, as does White. Salah with 6, Saka with 3, Andreas with 1, Bamford with 1. Standing ovation. He still only got 1 point. Haaland 10, Nketiah 1. So loads. It's been a bit of a rubbish game week, but there's so much still to play for. It's hard to say how your game week goes until we see Wednesday night fixtures, because obviously Liverpool and Arsenal, we're all heavily invested. A lot of us got Tarkowski. As always, it will probably go down to captaincy. It will be Saka versus Salah, maybe, for if you have a green or not. I don't know. Both got the 3 points at the weekend. Yeah. I'm still fairly confident, although I'm conscious that many people watching this video will be watching it after the results, so I don't want to say too much.
Yeah, be like, guaranteed good week for Gianni in the comments now. I think really, you've got a team, like we all have, that is probably only 3 or 4 players different to most people. And then that's what Andreas, your Bamford, maybe Ake. And then it's like, do you have White or Gabriel? Do you have Saka and Nketiah, or Saka and Odegaard, or whatever it is? Which isn't even really a full difference because it's the same team. So their results are likely to be linked. So I think even if it feels like a poor week this week, which is mostly just against expectations, right? Because it's a big double. There were some good teams involved, and we're not even all the way through the double yet. I don't think it matters too much because everyone's in an extremely similar boat. What do you make of it, though, where I know some of the commentary has been, double game weeks might be overrated, or all the teams involved in this double game week, maybe we went too heavy. We are only halfway through. So far, your score right now is a single game week score. You've still got something to come. So where do you stand on that in the future? Do you think you'll go just as heavy in doubles coming up, or has this tempered your expectations?
I do. I do love a double game week, and I'm always happy if I need to go hits to get the right players in. And I was really close this game week to taking a -8, and I saw a lot of 8s and a lot of 12s, to be fair. I took a -4, and I didn't go for that additional 4-point hit to bring Darwin in for Bamford, which we don't know if that was a good or bad decision yet. I do think Darwin will start tonight. He's pictured in training yesterday, and Bamford obviously got the 1-pointer. But what I do think was perhaps, I'm slightly surprised by the amount of managers taking 8 and 12-point hits that are then going to wildcard this week. And you could argue they're 2 very separate decisions, But when I was planning my potential hits last week, it was with a view to different potential strategies based on those FA Cup results. So I knew what my strategy would be if Liverpool were to get a 28 fixture, and I knew what my strategy would be if Liverpool weren't to get a 28 fixture. Neither of those included a wild card. Now, for those that were taking -12s, for example, if there was a good chance you were always planning on a wild card in 26, I do perhaps think it might have been a little bit trigger happy going for the -12 straight away, because yeah, you were potentially playing the odds of Liverpool playing again in 28 and then having the triple up. But again, you knew that was 40% likely because based on the bookies odds. So yeah, perhaps some that went a little bit gung-ho, but at the same time, I never mind an aggressive approach with FPL, and I always like to chase the upside when it's there. And I guess that's what those managers did. But I do like to plan and be very strategic with my potential decisions based on those fixture announcements or cancellations, postponements on the FA Cup. And I kind of had several routes, which is why the wild card. I'm not surprised to see people wildcarding, but I do think those wildcarding perhaps have planned it and perhaps a bit more spontaneous. The wildcard does look good, however.
Yeah, do you think people are wildcarding in a more reactionary sense in terms of not because they did poorly this week, although that's a psychological lever, but let's not judge people on that, it affects us all. But because we now have clarity, or at least by tonight, we will have even more clarity over what those fixtures are going to be. I don't think there were any massive surprises. Leicester, maybe a little bit, but otherwise, It's probably what we would have predicted if we had to make a prediction. So do you think people are reacting to the fact that that's now fact, it's now solid, and so, we act differently when we know something for certainty? Or do you think people maybe just didn't quite, look this far ahead, which I think is fine too. I was probably one of those people where because I didn't need to take hits, I could just do a couple of frees. I was like, you know what, I'll solve 25 and I'll solve 26 and onwards later. So now that we have that information, I'm now going, oh gosh, I need to react to this new situation. Where do you think people are falling?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. I probably forget though. Of course, I don't expect everyone to look into it with a great deal of detail as perhaps I did. I don't know. I think many will look at this game week and go, "Oh, I've got 3 Liverpool players now, and they play Man United, who if we look at, are currently playing some of the best football in the league, right?" So that's a really tricky fixture. And then, of course, like any week, if you've still got a wild card in your pocket, you should be open to it. We should remain flexible. And you go, well, if I was to wild card this week, not only do I get a really good team out this week, but I'm well set for the doubles and the blanks. And I think if you pull the trigger this week, you're removing those 3 Liverpool, and of course, many of Rashford and some of Shaw and Bruno still. They don't like the idea of having 5 or 6 players in that one fixture. You're taking all of them out, probably other than Rashford, and you go, okay, yeah, now I can have, your Brentford and Brighton players who not only double next week, but have a really good fixture this week. So it gives you the optimal team immediately, which is how people think and probably affects people's decisions when wildcarding. Sure, you don't wildcard for 1 week, but if that first week you wildcard on paper, your team looks perfect, you're more likely to pull that trigger. People love having the best team every single week. And we know as FPL managers, that's just not realistic long term, but we will see it in front of us and want a bit of it.
It's the old delayed gratification thing, isn't it? Have you heard of that study where, I say that study, I think Haribo made an advert out of it, where you put a kid in a room, you put a sweet on the table in front of them, and it's like, you can have this sweet now, or if you don't touch it for 10 minutes, we will bring you 2 sweets. And most kids will take the sweet now because delayed gratification is difficult. We want that instant, bit of dopamine, and it's very hard to wait for something better in the future when there's a good thing in front of us now. It's not just kids, right? Adults suffer, experience the absolute same thing. I know I really do. FPL aside, I know in my personal life, I'm so bad for future planning and, not just taking the good thing now. Do you think that comes, I guess it does, comes into our fantasy thinking? Do you think it hinders us a bit?
Mate, you've absolutely nailed it. It absolutely comes into our thinking. And sure, of course, it probably hinders us. And I'm definitely guilty of that as well. And we're a bit like that with doubles, aren't we? Because often when there's a double, we'll beeline for a player and take hits to bring in a player that's playing twice. But then that might mean you don't take in a hit the next week to cover someone else's blank. And you're like, oh, over the long run, that team could have had this. I'm struggling to get my point across, but your fixtures could be the same in terms of fixtures played total over your team, but instead you rather stack up on the double and then ignore the blank, rather than just go a little bit of the doubling is actually okay, and then I'm well protected for the blank. And in total, I get the same number of players out over that 3 or 4 week period, but you want more now, which is why we go early and we take that sweep within the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And one last sort of thought experiment I try to run with myself when doing this, which I don't think is a success. It's not necessarily grounded in reality either. But obviously we experience FPL over 38 weeks. They're not necessarily, well, they are consecutive, but they're not necessarily all next to each other because we have breaks. Sometimes they're doubles, sometimes they're blanks. But it's a 9-month pursuit. And so when we're picking things at the beginning of the season, or even, halfway through the season for the next X number of weeks, it's very hard not to just focus on what comes next, whether that's in terms of planning, also in terms of reacting to the points we got last week, as opposed to looking at the whole. Now, of course, you can make changes every week and et cetera, et cetera. But I think an interesting way of considering FPL is, say it still took place over 38 separate matches, but like Football Manager or something, you could just run this simulation in one go. Now, ignore the fact that you want to make changes in between those weeks. It doesn't matter for this example. I think we would think of FPL very, very differently if you were just delivered all of your results at once. It's like, here are your 38 weeks worth of results. They are still individual weeks. You could still, I know mechanically this doesn't make sense, but you could still make changes in between them, but you will receive your results in one big batch. I think we would find it a lot easier to ignore bad weeks and find the good weeks, or vice versa. And most importantly, we would find it a lot easier to plan for game week 36 when we were in game week 29, because we wouldn't have to wait 7 weeks for it to happen. Like I say, I know this isn't applicable to reality, but I think it's an interesting one to try and frame for yourself when looking to make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if we were to be presented with that sort of opportunity, how many managers would take it? Like, do we like that drip feed, or would we like that? I don't know. It would be an interesting experiment. FPL in years to come. Who knows what's around the corner?
When the models are fully taken over, we can just simulate it in one go. Get it done in a weekend and move on. Speaking of getting it done and moving on, let's have a look at your team for next week. Now, you've not made any changes yet, I don't think. So run us through your team and run us through your immediate concerns before we talk about whether you're going to wildcard or what plans you have.
I guess firstly, I quite like my team this week. So Kepa in goal, home fixture. White is a good fixture. Ake, same. Tarkowski goes to Forest and then Trent. So it's currently a back four. The midfield four of Salah, Saka, Rashford and Solly March, who is flagged, but I think will be fine, although we'll wait for the press conference. Italian managers are quite good at letting you know who's injured, so I expect Zerbi will tell us. Haaland and Nketiah up top. Bench of Bamford, Andreas and Trippier and Ward in goal. Nketiah is my biggest concern. Does he start tonight is the big question. If he doesn't start tonight and Arsenal play well without him again, he'll be my sell. If he does start and looks good, then I'll probably sell Bamford, but I am looking to sell in that position.
Fair. So what are we thinking in terms of wildcard or no wildcard right now in 26? Are you doing it?
No, I'm not, and I don't mind those that are, and I'm bored of seeing the whole it's team dependent, because it absolutely is, and we almost feel as content creators we have to caveat every statement with it's team dependent, but it is. And for my team at this moment, I don't think a wildcard is necessary. I know the wildcard will see some gains, but I think I would want more, and that's perhaps because I only committed to 2 Liverpool players. Loads wildcarding committed to 3. And I already own a Brighton player. Loads wildcarding don't own any Brighton or any Brentford. Now, I only have one over those 2 teams, admittedly, but it's one more than a lot that are wildcarding. So I think and I don't have major fires elsewhere in terms of injuries and stuff. And I don't have any dead spots. Again, many wildcarding might have a Greenwood from Leeds in their team who just isn't getting a minute. So they might have a Nico Williams still or whatever. Well, I do think Nico played the other day because of an injury, but we know he's not first choice. So for that reason, I'm not wildcarding. And I've looked at this period, and I can still set myself up well for 27 and make sure I have 2 Brighton, 2 Brentford, with only I think 1 hit. And I can still get out an okay team in the blank of 28. I think I would be at 9 men with another hit. And then I would still have 13 doublers going into the double of 29 with a bench of like a doubler, Saka and Haaland, or White and Haaland. And that's potentially still a bench boost week, which I know a lot of wildcarders looking to do. So my plan for game week 29, by the time I get there, is to try and get to a very similar type of squad to what the wildcarders are actually have. Now, I will have had to have taken more hits, and I won't have some of the luxuries in that 29 team. Like, say, some will have Bruno, and I won't be able to get there. But I will have your Madisons and your Tonys and your Matomas. And with that in mind, I think it's knowing I'd only have to take 8 points worth of hits, or maybe minus 12. I think over that period of time, that's okay.
And I guess the plan there. So you know you're not going to use any chips between now and 29. It sounds like the plan, of course, would be to use your chips later. And so if you're taking, it sounded like a -8, maybe a -12 there. That is a net point difference you would hope to make up between 32 and 36, give or take, on people who are playing chips now and therefore would have to take hits or not take hits but field less optimal players than you are able in the future. Is that the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. My plan before last night was to free hit in blank game week 28. So nothing really has changed other than the use of the free hit. And the reason
what changed that?
So what changed that was the Fulham result. So Leeds now play in 28, which gets me... So Leeds Wolves goes ahead instead of Fulham and Liverpool. And I knew it'd be one of the two, but that gives me Bamford. So that's one additional spot in 28. Although you could argue I would have had the Liverpool players and the Fulham player. But it's an option. And then also the other big factor, there was two. Brentford Leicester. So knowing Brentford play in 28, and I'm going to be buying 2 Brentford players between now and then, it gives me 2 additional players. So if you add Bamford and then the 2 Brentford guys that I'm going to bring in, it's like, okay, I've got 3 additional players. I was on 6 players that meant I was going to use a free hit, or maybe even 5, and now I'm on 8 or 9 players. And I feel like it's not necessary to use a free hit, knowing I'm covering all the main bases. The one player I won't have in that blank that I really want would be Ollie Watkins, who plays Bournemouth at home. I won't have any Aston Villa players, but other than that, I'll be pretty well protected. So yeah, definitely not worth the free hit now. The Brentford edition was the bigger one than Bamford, obviously, because I knew it'd be either Bamford plays or my Liverpool players play.
Yeah, I think Liverpool playing or not playing, which we probably edged towards not playing, but we weren't sure. And your preference there depended on, your team state, of course. The other big pivot point was whether Brentford played or not. And I think that became, because of the Leicester upset, I think that was, we probably didn't expect that to happen. It is happening. And of all the teams, they probably line up the best because they have fixtures all the way through and they have doubles. So a double or triple Brentford is probably what we're after. So is that what you would be alongside maybe a Brighton? Is that what you're targeting here? And obviously Brighton would blank for you now if you're not free hitting in 28. So is it, you've got March, is it Brentford you are after?
Yeah, I want 2 Brentford, 2 Brighton. So my next 3 transfers will be, sorry, the sun's in my eyes. My next 3 transfers, same time of day, we always do this. I remember last week. I
just love the way you look in the sun, mate. I wait. As the year gets older, this is going to get, 5 minutes later every single week, just so I can catch you every time.
It's like a weird Instagram filter. So not that I play around with Instagram filters.
If it is bothering you, feel free to move and I'll follow you with the camera so we can still see you on stream.
Oh, bless you. No, honestly, it's good. I'll stick you more the viewers. So yeah, my next 3 transfers will be Brighton and Brentford players. Now, I don't want to go big on them this week. I want that extra week's worth of information. That could be information on Tony's court case. It could be information on Tony's yellow cards because he's on 8, and if he gets to 10, he has too much ban. So let's say he gets booked this week. Saying that I do think Tony will be my transfer in, I think I don't mind enough about those 2 things. But I can see why managers want to hold. But then the other thing is that extra Brighton player I transfer in. Another week to watch Matoma and McAllister and go, which one do I want? I think it's Matoma. McAllister did play deep again last night in the 2, not in the 10, which was frustrating because the last Premier League games has been the 10 both times. But knowing that he's in and out that 10 role, I only want McAllister in the 10 role. So yeah, I think I will go Tony this week and then 1 Brighton, 1 Brentford next week for the 4-point hit. But it'd only be taking 1 4-point hit to get 2 of each ready for 27, which I'm quite happy with.
That seems reasonable. I think if any other week you said, oh, should I wildcard or should I take a 4-point hit? I think everyone would say a 4-point hit. So while, you're probably a couple more hits away from what the optimal team might be, and I have put together, we can have a look in a minute, a suggested wildcard. I think you're close enough that is a decent decision to make. I think we do have here, we can bring up some fixtures. So Legomani very, very kindly has put this together. It's over on Twitter at Legomani_FPL. This is updated from last night. So we have Tuesday night's FA Cup results factored into this. We do not have Wednesday nights. Again, we're recording Wednesday afternoon, but I believe we can expect Tottenham and Southampton probably to progress. You can see these here on the graphic. The Tottenham fixture in 28 does have an asterisk next to it against Southampton and the corresponding reverse fixture with Southampton. So if they were to have a fixture, that is the fixture they would have there. So we see here we have 26, 27, 28, 29, and then onwards into the 30s. The blue is, possible fixtures, which we'll know more about the percentage chance of them happening from the draw, which will happen tonight, following the matches. When depends on extra time, and then the result of those will influence 34 and 37 again, which we can see here we have the possibility. So we can even start to draft, a Man City 34 with Fulham and West Ham might be very, very tasty, whereas a Man City 37 with Chelsea and Brighton is a little less tasty. So while we don't know for sure, we can speculate again. But Gianni, the reason I bring this up is with what you've said in mind. Does the route you're plotting through here look sensible? We've mentioned Brentford. We can see there that they play all the way through this period and have 2 doubles. Your Brighton players will blank in 28, which may be a bit of an issue. We see Man United also blank there and then have a double. So how do you feel about this? And what sort of teams would you be targeting on a non-wildcard strategy such as yourself?
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone to look at Lego Mane's graphic, which is brilliant, and it's really clear with those blue boxes, which is useful. I think the teams I target are very similar to the wildcard teams, but it's what we do after 29, which I think could give those that haven't wildcarded perhaps a little bit more flexibility at time. I'd like to think those that haven't wildcarded perhaps we'll have a little bit, just looking at my team, I'm going to have tons of money in the bank come game week 29, 30. So if I want to jump on, say, a Harry Kane or a De Bruyne or even a Foden or a Mahrez, I can do. And I do think Man City and Spurs are both interesting. And again, it won't be teams we're well stacked on. I think a lot on wildcard will have sold their Arsenal defender, for example. I'm likely to keep my Arsenal defender throughout, and I think there's some okay fixtures there. I'd expect clean sheet or 2 from Arsenal post to 29. I think they play Liverpool in 30, then West Ham and Southampton if it happens after that. So yeah, I think having the chips at your full disposal, knowing we're going into what will be a very big blank game week 32, could be useful, because 32 could very easily be one in which a free hit is very useful. If you've wildcarded you earlier, you might struggle to get 11 out in 32. You might be on 6 or 7 players. So having a free hit then, I think, will be a strategy that those that are wildcarding maybe look to go for. But likewise, if you've still got your wildcard in your pocket, which I hope to have by 32, I can dead end my team. So my transfers in 30 and 31 and 32 can all be veered towards players that I know are playing in 32. They might not be players I want long term, but in game week 33, I can then hit that wildcard button and put it right. So I can sell good players in 31 and 32 if I need to, knowing I can bring them back in 33 with that wildcard. And then you set yourself up for the big double game week in 34, which is a really good bench boost option. Or maybe it's 37 bench boost. Likewise, you might free hit in one of those big doubles as well. So there's options aplenty there.
And one more thing I'd love to throw into your analysis there, which I think benefits you, is if we look at along the dates here at the top as well, between game week 28 and game week 29, that is the 18th of March to the 1st of April, that's the first fixture, obviously, of each of those weeks, there is an international break during that period. So if you are wildcarding now, and part of your strategy, of course, is not just getting your 26 and your 27ers, but covering 28, maybe you could still free hit in that week, that's still possible, but you do need to be setting up for 29 as well, because that might even be your bench boost week. There is a little bit longer. There is chances of injuries, either from the international break or just the fixtures in between, that could mess with your plans. Now, you do have options. There are a lot of doubles in there. I think it's probably the week where the most teams will double, even if not it's the best doubles. I think the best doubles might be 34, 37, but the most are in this upcoming 29. So you do still have options. Agreed. But I think that is one small weakness. Whereas in your strategy, Gianni, I believe 32 would be the blank, which is indicated here by the sort of slightly faded box highlighting as opposed to the thick line box highlighting. When we know what happens in the FA Cup, we'll know where those blanks are. Those doubles would then go into 34, potentially 37 later with semi-finals as well. You would be ending into 32 wildcarding into 33 and prepping your bench boost for 34, which obviously, looking at this, that's the 22nd of April to the 29th. That's a week.
Yeah.
Because 33 is a midweek fixture. So, of course, I guess the risk there is there's a higher risk of rotation because of so many fixtures, but a much lower risk of injury. Or, for example, if Tony is going to get banned and you want him over that period, I don't know if you do, there would be less time for that to mess with your plans. One thing worth mentioning on Tony before I throw it back to you is I think you tweeted, in previous cases we've seen like this, it has been quite a long time between any admission of charges or contestation of charges and then a punishment being met. It often comes over, say, a summer break, and it could be months before that happens.
Yeah, exactly. I think we just go off the information we've got at the moment, and I don't think that should put you off Tony here and now just yet. I think the yellow cards is same again. Like, he's only on 8, he needs to get to 10. When he's on 9, you might have squeaky bum time, but I think he averages the yellow card he's at 8, and he's played 20 odd games, so he's averaging like 2.5 games.
2.8 I saw someone say the other day.
2.8.
Yeah, and he's got about, was it 8 fixtures to avoid that, I think? So
yeah, but it's different when you know that you see a ban if you pick them up, so you might have a slightly different state of mind, and your actions might change very slightly there.
I think that's reasonable. So one thing I'd love to throw at you then before we wrap up here is I did put together I think I said suggested earlier, that's the wrong word, just a potential wildcard that you could throw up for Gameweek 26. So I'll run through this real quick and then I would love your opinion on it. So we have Kepa in goal with Raya from Brentford. We have Gabriel, James, Shaw, Trippier, Dunk. Odegaard, Saka, Maddison, Rashford, and Solly March. He's in there for you. I'd probably go McAllister or Matoma, but March is in there for you, my friend. We then have Even Tony, Haaland, and Harry Kane up front. Couple of things there. Now, Harry Kane, I kind of throw in just because you could. The fixtures are nice. They don't blank as far as I remember. But maybe you go for a Watkins or someone else instead in that slot who doubles. You get one extra fixture, but Watkins isn't as good as Kane, so that's up to you. Of course, Kane needs more budget as well. And there's also the Manchester United players, so you're Shaw, you're Rashford. Whether you want to hold them or not, I don't know. I think that's probably one of the few places the 26 strategy diverges. It's whether you have Man United or you don't, or you jump on and off them. The one player that really stands out to me is Maddison. Assuming he is fit, that is probably a player us non-wildcarders cannot get to. That could be very, very tasty. But does this tempt you at all to wildcard? Or do you think, I'm actually not far from this, it reassures me not to wildcard?
I think it reassures me not to, because I look at it and think that's a very similar team to what I'll have in 29. And actually, my 29 plans is to sell, I'd be selling Salah in 28 for Maddison.
Okay, so you would get on Maddison.
And I'd go Maddison for 28 and then doubles in 29. And I'd selling Salah so you can go for any player you want.
So who does that mean? Just off the top of my head, that probably means you sacrifice something else. Would it be? Do we have Man United? So Man United double in 29. So does that mean you're potentially not getting? Oh, Bruno, you said, of course. So you're maybe not getting another Man United. Whereas the wildcarders here could probably do Arsenal to Man United. Arsenal have leads, so that's fine. But Man United
doing Odegaard to Bruno or Saka to Bruno. Yeah. So I think a lot of the wildcarders will be planning to sell their Arsenal assets, and again, often they won't have an Arsenal defender. The wildcard draft you've put together is very similar to the one I've put together. I don't have an Arsenal defender. I think I have an extra Brentford defender in there because you've gone to Brentford. But again, Arsenal have some good potential clean sheet fixtures, starting this weekend with Bournemouth. So I see the argument for that. But no, Maddison's, I think the midfield's set. Like, I look at that midfield and that's a very similar midfield to I'll get to. The front three, similar. I think you're right. Like, those wildcarding have got tons of money in the bank. Watkins can very easily be Kane. And it's nice to have that safety blanket if you need it. And then the back line's interesting because you're going to go with a Brighton player. You're going to have Trippier. You're going to have Shaw. A lot are going to go Reece James because he plays Everton in 28 at home and he does play in the double. But does he miss one of those 3 fixtures? Possibly. Although by then you would think he's playing 90 minutes consistently. So yeah, I mean, I like this wildcard team very much. But I also think with a 4-point hit next week and a 4-point hit for 28, I can get to a similar looking team. And therefore, it doesn't justify the wildcard team for me. But as I said earlier, that's because I already have one Brighton player. And I do think owning Solly March and only having 2 Liverpool is the difference between me going, wildcard's good for me or wildcard's not good for me. So yeah, it's an interesting one. What do you think, Seb? Like, how close is your team going to look to this? And I haven't asked you about your chip strategy, and I'm sure those watching will want to know.
I mean, it's Gianni's team reveal. So I think I'm very happy to be uncertain right now. It's Wednesday, mate. I don't think about this.
Are
The
you?
weekend.
Is there a
Fine.
chance you wildcard this weekend?
Oh, there's definitely a chance. It was the lower chance, but I wouldn't rule it out. You know me. Hopefully, like I'm not gonna nail myself into anything until I have to. I am trying to basically work out. So this team I've put together here, I am 6 transfers away from this identical team. Not getting close, the identical team, which
Yeah.
means I'm maybe 3 or 4 transfers away from
Yeah, very
getting close. And by close, I mean, I don't know, like, I guess if this was Watkins, Harry Kane, you know, that's a big difference. But something like, I wouldn't have Raya, but I'd have a Brentford defender. For me, that's, you know, close enough in terms of not identical points prediction, but enough for me to be satisfied. Of course, there is a big advantage in having the optimal setup and the optimal players. I'm leaning towards trying to save it for later because I do have triple Liverpool, but I still have Trippier. I still have Shaw and Rashford, which are big parts of this team, I think, which people did get rid of to get their Liverpool players. I feel like I can earn more points later and maybe even avoid a hit or two. I think I'd probably take a single -4 to get Brentford and Brighton for this coming period. Get through 28 without a free hit, hopefully. Arsenal will help me a lot there. I'd have triple Arsenal. Then 29, that's probably the painful one where this team here is going to have, you can have 15 doublers. And they could be 15 doublers from a different, you know, a few selections. We mentioned injuries. Well, you could go a number of routes with this team, I think. And you can play your bench boost. I would then obviously hope to make that up later. And I think the main place I'd hope to make it up is while this team has more doubles available, it's not Liverpool, it's not City. And I think if I was going this route, I'd sell Haaland. I wouldn't have Haaland in 29.
I was going to say, you say 15 doublers, but if you're on a wild card and you're going to bench boost in 29, is it not 13 doublers plus Saka or a defender?
No, so I think like
one Arsenal defender or one Arsenal player and Haaland.
I mean, the one I've set up here, yeah, you've got triple Arsenal, you've got Haaland as well. That's too many transfers to not have it. But the ones people will set up, I wouldn't be surprised if have 15 doublers, at least 14. Haaland's probably the one you keep, but Haaland in 29 has Liverpool at home. Yeah, that's fine, right? You probably predict him 6 or 7 points. But was it Watkins? Chelsea away, Leicester away. You've got Brentford as well there. Who else could be decent? I mean, Iheanacho from Leicester maybe. Palace away, Villa at home. You could edge it. And obviously you take those funds and improve the rest of the team. So I think if I was going this strategy, I might really commit to it and have no Haaland. For myself, to go back to just why I maybe would go later, it's speaking of Haaland is going to double again later. You know, if I get a Fulham West Ham in Gameweek 34, for example, which I still have my triple captain. But to me, triple City, triple Liverpool, because they would also, I mean, Tottenham, Fulham, it's not quite as good. Aston Villa, Fulham in 37 potentially. I guess I'm trading the number of fixtures for hopefully the quality of team. I know Liverpool aren't, you know, the best they've been, but they're still probably better than Villa. So I think I'd go for quality of players over quantity of players, if that makes sense.
I like it. I think we're thinking similar things. Worth noting as well, those on a wild card, their team looks great, obviously, and they're going to have some wins, and we're going to be down on the field for this period. One benefit to those not wildcarding is Liverpool play Bournemouth at home in game week 27. So if you're not wildcarding, you've still got your Liverpool assets for that fixture, which is really strong. So my plan is, and I only have double Liverpool, I'll have Salah and Trent, and they'll feel like differentials amongst the community, or certainly amongst anyone that's wildcarded, because no one's wildcarding with Liverpool players in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know what will happen here, right? Best laid plans of men and mice and all that. And then Trent will score the one free kick he scores this season and outscore any doubler. And we'll have the same conversation over whether singles and doubles are worth it, etc., etc. One last thing then before we wrap up. I'll flip back to your team so people can see that. And we did last week talk about a little aspirational pick for you. That was Diego Jota. We didn't know Darwin wouldn't play. So on the surface, great shout, mate, because he obviously came into the team. We might get that answer to the question tonight, whether Darwin, Jota and Salah all line up in the same team. But Jota did only return 2 points, played 70 odd minutes, I think. Yeah. So what are you thinking? Firstly, what do you think about that? And what are you thinking this week? Is there a player, now I guess this is an easy one because people are going to have wildcards, who should people get that you can't get that is going to make you sad?
Oh, I wish I knew the answer to that. I'm gonna just answer the Jota question, I guess. Like I think he could get 60 tonight, and we could see that front three, which should be fun. But again, I don't want to speak too much about Liverpool because I know most will watch this after the game. But no, I mean, aspirational pick this week that I think Tony at home to Fulham is a really good fixture. Brentford's home form has been brilliant, and I think Fulham, the way they're playing at the moment, I know they've scored a couple of goals against Leeds last night. The XG was so low. How they beat Brighton the week before, the XG was so low. Like both those games feel. I mean, Leeds, I think XG was like 1.56. Fulham's was like 0.2. Against Brighton the week before, it was even more extreme than that, and they won the football match. They are getting away with it, I would say. They're scoring worldies, but they don't have Paulinho against Brentford. And Fulham aren't a team used to playing twice a week. So I do think they'll hit that game. And it is on Monday. They've got the recovery time. But I do think they'll hit that game and Brentford will be the stronger team. And I think those that are wildcarding and go Tony could be instantly rewarded. And that makes me really want to bring in Tony this week. So as I say, I don't know who I'm selling over Bamford or Nketiah yet. It depends on Nketiah minutes. But I really want to protect that by buying Tony this week.
Reasonable, but you can get to Tony. So for the spirit of the question, if there's anyone who can't, I'll throw a suggestion at you. So I know Leicester and
I was going to
Aston
say
Villa.
Maddison. Let's play Southampton, didn't
they? Leicester have Southampton away, Chelsea home in 27, Brentford away in the 28 blank, which could be tough to be fair. Then Palace and Villa away home in 29. Okay. Villa as well have Palace home, West Ham away, Bournemouth home, Chelsea and Leicester away. The popular assets from those two teams are Maddison and Watkins, respectively, which I think is a good shout anyway. But what if we went one step further and went like Iheanacho and Buendia? Would that tempt you? Because I think Iheanacho could be, if he's got that starting role, he's a good price for our forwards. He's the bracket we're looking at, and he could be someone that a lot of people aren't going to have over this period who does equally well.
I would like to just say to those on a wild card going Iheanacho, I think he's a very good FPL player, but just know that his manager hates him. Brendan Rodgers hates Iheanacho with a passion. He doesn't want to play him. And when he does play him, and admittedly he's started the last 4 Premier League games, he's done well in all of them, and he came on last night and scored straight away, the guy won't ever breach. He'll never get 90 minutes. So looking at the last 4, 66, 76, 74, 61, he'll always come off around the hour mark. Now, maybe that's fine. Maybe that's all you need. But just don't get angry with those early substitutions. Even in games he's scoring goals, and even in games he's playing really well, it will happen. And that puts me off him. And it perhaps shouldn't do, because the numbers are there, even when he gets 60, 70, but it would put me off him. I would probably go, if I want to invest heavily in that Leicester attack, and I've already got Maddison, I'd probably play safe and go for Barnes, for example, who Rodgers absolutely loves with a passion. Oh, look, let's look at his last 8 games, 90 minutes in all of them. Literally doesn't come.
How many goals and assists, pal?
Good question. Quite a few, actually.
Okay.
He's had 2 pointers in the last 2, but then he had a 6 and 8 and a 7.
Massive. That's Hallwood.
Iheanacho's had more is the short answer.
Yep, fair. I think that's reasonable. Do we know who's on penalties for Leicester with no Vardy on the field? I know Yuri Tielemans would often take them.
But he's injured now. He's out for 6 weeks.
Could it be Iheanacho? Maddison?
I think Mads would step up, wouldn't he? Okay. I don't know.
So I think Maddison's probably the sensible pick here. Iheanacho would be an extra as opposed to a replacement. And then Villa nailed on Watkins. We saw him take a penalty, so that helps.
Yeah, I've never been confident over Watkins in front of goal, let alone penalties. But yeah, he did. He converted his penalty well down the middle. Watkins is a really good pick. He's flying, isn't he? 5 and 5. I just think Emery ball suits him, counter-attack. And Buendia, another name you mentioned, also looks really good. Like, he's realised, or Emery's kind of clearly said, like, he needs one creative midfielder. He can't always accommodate 2. And if it's Coutinho or Buendia, it's always going to be Buendia. And at times it will be both, but I think it will often be Leon Bailey instead of Coutinho, and then Buendia has that 10 role.
Fair. So I think Maddison, Watkins is probably your order of preference here.
It would be Mads, then Watkins. And then if I was taking a punt, it would be... Nacho's not a bad shout up front.
So you heard it here first. Gianni says take hits to get Iheanacho. He's going to get at least 12, so take a -8 and you'll still be up. I think on that note, we will wrap it there, my friend. You are not wildcarding. You are predicting a big Liverpool victory tonight, and people on Thursday can watch this and see what we think.
I really hope Darwin blanks, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't even know if I'll watch tonight. Although, look, Captain Salah, so let's hope he bangs.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. I've enjoyed this again, as always. I do wish you luck, and I think I might be joining you. I'm probably closer to a 26 wildcard than you are, but I think I might be joining you on this journey. Tony will be coming in either way, so looking forward to that.
You must be closer than me, mate, because I am 0%, and I reckon you're 10.
0%. Is there nothing that would convince you?
I mean, I need some
Like
major
who
injuries.
has to write the thread? So I don't know, Andy, Praz, Mark. Who has to write the thread to convince you here?
Oh, not a single content creator
None of them
will turn my head. No.
Oh.
I wish they could. So it'd be easier. It'd be an easier game for me. But no, I'd need some major injuries or news to do that.
Oh, hey, I respect it. And look, we've talked it through. You at least know why you're doing it and what those ramifications will be. So yeah, I support it. If my support means anything, I support it. I think I might be joining you.
Seb, I should answer that content creator question because I just realised that could sound like I'm saying like I don't listen to any content creators. No, but it's more I make my own decisions when it comes to chip strategy every single time. But in terms of who could convert me, if I was say in a normal day transfer or whatever, then yeah, Mark Southerns would have to be the one. And look, this is a Scout channel. I've got to mention Mark, the founder of Scout. I guess in order of people that could turn me, it'd be Mark would be there, but you would be too, Seb. And when I say turn my FPL decisions, for those that want to clip that soundbite, and it sounds something it's not.
Comfortable either way.
Good. I knew you would be. So I'd say that you, Mark, and Late Riser are three managers that I often see. Like obviously I really respect, but also feel like I have similar thought processes too, which maybe is something that you shouldn't go for. Maybe you should find content creators that think completely opposite to you, and that's what you need. But I tend to veer towards those that think the same way, and I often think that Mark and Late Riser especially do. Perhaps you don't, but we just have such a good relationship that I just appreciate everything you say. But we are quite different FPL managers, but I'm sometimes in tune.
Fair. Well, Pranal, Mark, if you're watching, we have it in our power to ruin Gianni's season, so let's get on that. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been a pleasure. I hope it's been a pleasure to watch. We will try and get a live one out as well in the next few weeks so we can chat to you, answer some questions. But until then, Gianni, thank you so very, very much, and good luck in 26 and beyond.